Here's something strange, but true. The people who get promoted the fastest aren't always the most talented. They're not always the ones with the longest hours or the biggest wins. Often, they're the ones who figured out something much less obvious: how to make themselves valuable to the people making decisions. Not just by being capable, but by being visible, by understanding what their organization actually needs and aligning themselves with that. It sounds simple, but it isn't. Because most of us grew up believing that success is linear. Study hard, work hard, be good, and the rewards will follow. But in real life, doing your job well isn't always enough to grow. What actually helps, what really moves things forward, is knowing how to show people what you bring, when to speak up, what to ask, and who to ask it to. So if we've been taught all the wrong things about getting ahead, what would happen if we finally learned how it really works? That's what this video is really about. Let's begin. The mistake we make when asking for more. Let's say someone's been in the same role for 2 or 3 years. They've worked hard, picked up extra tasks, trained new people, fixed problems without needing attention. One day, they decide it's time. They want a raise, or at least to talk about moving up. So they prepare. They make a list of achievements, maybe even compare their salary with others online, then walk into the meeting with their manager, ready to explain why they deserve more. And most of the time, the conversation goes something like this: I've been doing a lot. I've taken on extra responsibilities. I've been consistent. I think it's time we talk about compensation. It sounds fair, even reasonable. But strangely, it doesn't always work. Not because what they're saying is wrong, but because they've skipped a step. They never asked what matters most to the person sitting across the table. They never stopped to think, what's my manager actually trying to solve right now? What would make their life easier? What would make me hard to replace? That's the part most of us miss. Because we're so focused on proving ourselves, we forget to connect. And that's what promotions and raises are really built on, not just performance, but alignment. Not just what we've done, but how clearly it fits into what the team or company actually values right now. So the next time we feel ready to ask for more, maybe the first step is simpler. Ask a question. Get curious. And start by understanding what the other side needs before we ask them to give us what we want. What makes someone irreplaceable? In any team, there's always someone people naturally turn to. Not just because they're skilled, but because when they're not around, little things start slipping. Communication slows down, small problems grow bigger, and suddenly everything feels harder than it used to. That's what being irreplaceable actually looks like. And here's why that matters. When you reach that point, when people quietly start saying, we need them, everything shifts. You don't chase recognition, you attract it. Promotions become smoother, raises feel more natural, and even in uncertain times, you're the last one they want to lose. Let's take a real example. Think about a team member who always knows what's coming next, who asks the right questions in meetings, who checks in before things go off track. They're not doing more. They're just paying attention to what matters. Maybe it's someone who sees that their boss is overwhelmed and starts sending a simple weekly update unasked. Or the one who notices that no one ever volunteers for the last minute tasks, so they quietly build a system to make it easier. So how do we apply this? Becoming irreplaceable isn't about doing everything. It's about knowing what the people around you value most and making sure you're the person who brings it. So ask yourself, what's the one thing I could do this week that would make my manager's job easier? What's broken that no one's talking about? What kind of teammate do they wish they had more of? Then, quietly, become that person. It could be as simple as starting the meeting on time and taking notes, or sending a reminder email to the team before a deadline, or creating a short checklist that makes work clearer for everyone. These are not fancy tasks, but they solve real problems that others might not have time to fix. That's the first step to becoming irreplaceable, not by doing everything, but by doing the right small things at the right time for the right people. Value beyond salary. Money matters, we all know that. It gives us options, reduced stress, and yes, being paid fairly is a form of respect. But here's the catch. Money alone isn't what makes a job feel good. There are people with high-paying jobs who dread Mondays. And there are others making less, but waking up with a quiet sense of purpose. Because they feel seen, trusted, and part of something that matters. That's the piece we don't talk about enough. That beyond the paycheck, what really shapes how we feel at work is this. Do I feel valued? Not just for what I do, but for who I am when I do it. Let's take a simple example. 2 employees have the same role. One clocks in, does the job, and leaves. The other does the same tasks, but also checks in with their team, helps make meetings run smoother, and makes their manager's day 10% easier without being asked. Same salary, very different experience. Because the second one is building something else, a sense of influence. And that influence creates opportunities. People share more with you, trust you more, offer you more. So here's something worth asking, especially if you've been feeling stuck lately. What do I want more of from my job? Money, meaning, or momentum? And what small move could I make this week to move closer to that? Because when you start making yourself more valuable to the right people, work starts to give back in ways that have nothing to do with payroll. Make your work visible. One of the things we often assume at work is that if we just keep doing a good job, someone will notice. But the truth is, people are busy. Everyone's juggling tasks, meetings, deadlines. That's why sometimes, even when we've been putting in the effort, solving problems, and keeping things running smoothly, it feels like no one really sees it. Making your work visible doesn't mean showing off or talking about yourself all the time. It just means sharing what you're doing in small, natural ways so people around you can understand how you think, what you're solving, and how you're helping. For example, if you fix a recurring issue that's been slowing the team down, you say, I notice this keeps happening, so I tried a different approach this week. It saved us some time. Happy to share if it helps. Or if you stayed late to fix something before a big presentation, it's okay to send a quick message the next morning like, I made a few updates last night to help get the slides ready for the client. These kinds of moments don't feel like self-promotion. They feel like being a thoughtful teammate. And when you do it consistently, people start to remember not just what you did, but how you work. They start to see you as someone who is not only reliable, but also aware, proactive, and clear. And that's what opens the door for trust, respect, and eventually, bigger opportunities. Not because you asked for attention, but because you made your impact easier to see. Turn nerves into energy. Right before something important, like asking for a raise or leading a meeting, most of us feel it. That tight chest, racing heart, sweaty palms. We often call it anxiety and try to shut it down. We take deep breaths. We tell ourselves to calm down. But here's the thing, that rarely works. According to psychological research, trying to relax in a high-stress moment doesn't make you think more clearly or perform better. What does help is something surprisingly simple, changing what you call the feeling. Because inside your body, anxiety and excitement are almost identical. Your heart races, your breathing changes, your energy builds. The only difference is a story your brain attaches to it. So the next time you feel that wave of nerves coming on, don't resist it. Welcome it. Quietly say to yourself, I'm not scared. I'm ready. I'm excited. If there's one thing to take away from everything we've talked about, it's this. Career growth isn't only about moving up. It's about becoming the kind of person others rely on. The one people trust in important moments. The one they want in the room, not because you speak the loudest, but because you bring calm, clarity, and real value when it matters most. And here's something you might not realize. You could already be that person more than you think. Maybe the way you helped a teammate last week made more of a difference than you know. Maybe solving that small issue quietly kept your team running smoothly. Maybe the habits you've built over time are already making you valuable. You just haven't named it that way yet. So don't feel like you have to change everything about yourself to move forward. Start by noticing the good things you already do. Then take just one small step to make that impact a little more clear, a little more connected, a little more intentional. Because sometimes the next step in your career isn't about doing more. It's about realizing how much value you already bring and choosing to show it. If this sparked something in you, hit like so we know it resonated. Subscribe for more videos like this, real, honest, and grounded in what actually helps. And in the comments, tell us, what's one small step you're going to try this week to grow in your work? We read every single one, and we're rooting for you.